Now, even though I've been a fan of Röyksopp since the beginning, it was only the other day that I looked up what Röyksopp meant, and it actually means puffball mushroom, or represented in a plume of a atomic bomb cloud shape of a mushroom. And the reason they did this was because when you thought of the word Röyksopp, they just wanted you to associate that word or that name with their band. Quite smart, really. Now, the duo, Torbjørn and Sven from Norway, first came to my attention when they released the track Paulino, which is a brilliant dance track. And the track So Easy had been released a few years earlier, but it was the release of their debut album in 2001 that was to shoot them into the starlight. They were influenced in the early days by bel canto, where they would link up with Anneli Drecker, hopefully I pronounced that right, and Gia Jensen, probably pronounced that wrongly. You may remember him from Biosphere, which was some great ambient stuff. Compulsion was a favourite track of mine back in the day. So success is often about timing, and around the year 2000, down tempo was really picking up, and I think the ravers in the 90s had partied so hard they were beginning to prefer the early morning come downs, and Melody AM would fit perfectly into this pattern. To get a feel for Melody AM, think of Boards of Canada's 1998 classic, The Music Has a Right to Children. It would follow in those creative footsteps, but think of it as more lighter and accessible. Röyksopp even sent 100 copies to Banksy, who spray painted their name in stencil style. And about those 100 copies have only been rising in price online ever since. So around this time I'd heard Paulino and So Easy and Remind Me, and a lot of their tracks, and I liked the album. But it wouldn't be until many years later that I really appreciated this album more. I thought it was good. It was a good debut release. But it wasn't until The Understanding that came out in 2005 that I realised, how creative and skilled these guys are, and it wasn't just a one-off. And when Only This Moment and 49% were released, they were the first initial singles from the album. I like the tracks, but it wasn't until I bought the album that I realised that they were probably the weakest tracks on it. I realised once this album started playing a few times, these guys were incredibly creative and talented, and I believe that their success on this album came from the body of work in it, not so much the singles, but they've got to release a single, right? So what can you do? There's tracks like Alpha Male, which is like a ballad that you can just imagine driving down the motorway with. The vocals fit perfectly, beautifully with the production. And this is where Röyksopp was starting to rise with that sort of euphoric production and words that they were writing as well. The confidence was really, really strong on this album. But it was the album that was amazing rather than the singles, which was great. It was refreshing, But rather it was that way around. And I remember thinking at the time, what is it that makes these guys so unique? They're kind of pop, but they're not poppy. They're familiar yet unfamiliar, as Sven would say himself. The vocal elements that they picked, they used to perfection, and the people they choose for their tracks are just spot on. It's their creative beats for sure. They're amazing at their beats, but I suppose it has to be mainly their, the analog synthesizers like the monophonic Korg MS-20 and the polyphonic Roland Juno. Just check out the track Vision 1. Now, people often say, the test is that shaky second album, can they do it? And they certainly did it with The Understanding. Whether they could do a third album, well, incredibly, this is probably my favourite album of theirs, Junior. Amazing. The quality really shines through on this album. This is where they met Robyn, who features on The Girl and the Robot. To me, there's no weak track on this album. Start to finish, it's a treat for the ears. And once again, the vocalists that they pick are just compelling, and the lyrics are so good. And when an album is this good, I don't need to say much more, just go and check it out. But what I will say is if you don't know much about Röyksopp, this is a great place to start. Because if you don't like this album, you probably won't like anything else of theirs. But in saying that, if you want to check out their down-tempo stuff, you'll probably need to dig a bit deeper. Now, a year later, they released Senior, which was meant to be their sort of partner to the Junior album, but this was like their down-tempo side. And so, talking about their down-tempo, this is a great project. I love it, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's for everyone. But that's what I like about it. You know, they always do what they want to do. If you like kind of Brian Eno's side of things, then this would be a good album to listen to. Or Stars of the Lid, which is bordering on drone music, which I don't like that word, but let's call it ambient. Senior would be a slightly more darker project. In 2014, they released The Inevitable End, which they said would be their last album project, which reflects a bit of everything they're known for, to be honest. But the standout tracks for me, and which are the best by far for me, and again, choosing Jamie Irrepressible was visionary, because all the tracks featuring him, which he appears on, are just the best tracks on the album by far. Now, even though these guys said that The Inevitable End would be their last album, which is understandable in the digital world, they still continued to release outstanding individual tracks, like Running to the Sea, Monument, the EP version, Inside the Idol, Hour Club, and In the End. These are all proof that these guys have it in their blood to continue going, to create and inspire for many years to come, even though we keep mentioning the end here. So thankfully in 2019 they released The Lost Tapes, which is a bunch of unreleased tracks, some old, some newish, which were gradually released over the coming year, bit by bit, which was very welcome for Röyksopp fans. But I can't help yearn for another album, because I love it when they get a project going, because they get really into it. And I just know that they have a bunch of bursting ideas to come out of them, which we're all desperate to hear. So it's their down-tempo stuff that I love the most, and I think they just never fail at that, which brings me on to their top 10, which I've picked with the aim that you just allow an hour of your time just to let go and totally space out, these deeply hypnotic sounds. I've said that The Understanding and Junior are the albums that are the best, but I don't believe, and I hope it's not The Inevitable End, as half the tracks in my top 10 are from 2014. It kind of says it all, so let's hope there's a lot more in the pipeline.